What's going on, guys? This is Martyrs Brigade 99 coming to you once again with another session of Dark Souls PvP. Alright guys, we're back at it again in the Coliseum, and this is part 2 of a video series that I like to title, If You're Gonna Come, Then Come Prepared. Right? So in the first video we did a lot of ranting, right? Basically about the incentives that come with the Coliseum and the ways in which people play when they're here. Okay, no big deal. I think we all kind of understand that at this point. Right? So now let's just kind of get into some basic commentary. Right? Not really going to talk about anything in particular. Just whatever comes in my mind, whatever comes to mind at the time that I'm talking. Right? That's one of the difficult things about having long commentaries, Sometimes you may enter this thing kind of with a few, one or two ideas, but after a little time you're kind of like, holy camole, what am I supposed to talk about? Right? So, hopefully this one will go pretty smooth. Alright, so we're at it once again, and I think this guy is either a 40-40 bit, and I haven't really been paying attention, I'm just kind of watching, but he has an interesting build. If you notice, he just casted Wrath of the Gods, right? So he has at least 28 in faith. He started off using a large club, right? And he even started to use the Great Scythe. Alright, so this is an interesting build. I'm thinking for the most part that perhaps he's using divine or occult weapons with the strictly faith build. Maybe he has about, either 24 or 26 in strength, because I think that's the minimum requirement that you'll need to be able to one-hand that club. Right, but even if, he still has to have somewhere around, 20 in dexterity, because if you guys notice, he was using the painted guardian sword. So I don't know. Now, one thing I will say about this 100 standard is that, especially with being in the Coliseum, you really see some interesting builds. Now, outside of what I would consider to be two of the most popular builds, I've seen a lot of interesting builds. This is one. This is one good example. Think about it. He's using a large club, a great scythe, and a painting guardian sword. We all know the minimum stats for those. But at the same time, he's fast rolling and still has enough faith for the Wrath of the Gods. Right? So I do think one good thing about the 100 standard is that people are forced to get creative, especially with regard to the Coliseum, because in the Coliseum people are kind of playing to survive. Right? So it's not just, I want to get better because I'm in a fight club, or it's not just, I want to win because the prize in the tournament is $10 or $15 PSN card. No, these guys are trying to get their names on the wall of fame, right? So because of that, these guys are making build contributions that are pretty creative. I will definitely say that, pretty creative. Alright, so we get a nice raging backstab there. Slow Turtles. Alright, that's an interesting name. Let's just hope that this guy is actually not a turtle, right? Because we kind of hate turtles. Although there are tactics for turtles. And I think one of the best tactics that I use is basically pulling out a bleed weapon and dealing with it that way. Right, but it looks like he has a falcon with a little fire buff on it, which is no problem, mainly because I have the halberd, and to the extent that he is swinging and I am able to sustain a hit, he's going to receive some counter damage. Right, so it's a good thing for me, and that's one thing that I really like about using the Leo ring with a medium build. Medium meaning mid-rolling build. Because a lot of guys are under the impression, right, that speed is the thing that makes a game. Right, and when I say make a game, I mean determines a game to be either a winning game or a losing game. I'm not really of that opinion. As a matter of fact, I'm of the opinion that insofar as you can incorporate other successful tactics, right, like avoiding at the correct times, incorporating, parries, that a medium build is not all that bad. And as a matter of fact, I think a lot more people will agree to that. Now, granted, it will take time to get used to medium rolling, especially when you've been so used to either fast rolling or using the Darkwood grain ring. But I mean, you give it enough chance, I'm pretty sure most of you guys will realize it is not that bad, right? Because I do quite fine with my level 100. As a matter of fact, I have about 3 or 4 level 125s that medium roll, and actually not all of them use the Leo ring. Alright, so we're back at it, and we're going to switch it up a little bit, get a little pike action in here, which is a good counter-attacking weapon. And actually, with my Leo build, I like to use mostly counter-attacking weapons, you know, kind of like the claymore, the pike, a lot of the other spears, the halberd, the gargoyle halberd, the black knight halberd, a lot of those weapons. But I mean, in addition to using those type of weapons, I also use the Quelaag Fury Sword. I think that's what it's called. I kind of dig that weapon. It's kind of cool. I know a lot of people don't really use it, mainly because it was one of those weapons that was kind of widely used when the game first came out. Because I mean, as far as looks is concerned, I think that weapon probably looks the best in my personal opinion. Right, so I know a lot of people used to dig it, but I mean, a lot of people didn't really give it a chance because it really didn't inflict that much damage. But hey, I'm satisfied with it. I think it's good when you have somebody just rolling behind your back over and over and over again. Right, the same can be said with the Falcon, the Painted Guardian Sword, as well as the Gold Tracers. I think those are good options against a lot of those guys that just like to either continuously flip around you, or for the turtles. And actually, I won't say that the Quelaag sword is good for turtles, but a lot of those fast swinging weapons that cause bleed are good for turtles. Alright, so we have a dark magic caster. Now, if you guys notice my tactic, what am I doing? I'm staying near a pillar. Right? Now, I don't know if it's going to happen in this particular instance, but I want you guys to just pay attention to the damage. Right? Because, did you guys just see that? One blast. One blast. That is ridiculous. And the thing is, I have 45 in vitality with the Ring of Favor and Protection. Right? So I have, I think it's 1708 exactly. And he just basically brought me down to like 2 vitality. And you know, these type of guys can be annoying, although their tactics can be somewhat defended against. Now, what do I mean by somewhat defended against? You guys notice that? What exactly do I mean by somewhat defended against? Well, there's kind of 2 tactics that I employ. One tactic is to keep my distance and to stay near a pillar, right? And be ready to jump at the most opportune time. Because in most cases, you're not really sure if they're going to cast the Dark Bead or the Pursuers, for which the Dark Bead obviously has the faster cast, and the Pursuers have the slower cast. Now, when you keep your distance, that gives you an opportunity to either use your environment to your advantage, or to jump at the right moment. Now, the other option is to stay relatively close. Now, why would I suggest for you to stay relatively close? Now, for a lot of you guys that are kind of quick on your feet with regard to the jump button, right? The closer you stay, in most cases, you can, and this is especially for a lot of you roll BS dudes, in a lot of cases, especially when they are casting the Pursuers, you can just BS punish them, right? Because in other words, it takes, I don't know, maybe a second and a half, maybe 2 for the full casting of the Pursuers, and during that time you can just dive in head first for BS, or you can roll BS them. Sometimes the same can be done with the Dark Beads, right? right? Because if you notice, they'll just do that arm raise and quick cast in some cases if you jump at the right time, especially when you have either a Darkwood Grain Ring or a fast roll. You can roll BS punish them, or at least roll into them and engage them with an attack. You know, kind of like if you have a, you know, Falcon or a Katana or something like that. So those are the two tactics that I use. Now, those two tactics were mainly relative to when you are in the arena. So let's just talk about cases like when you're in the township, right? Because, you know, the township area is kind of like one of those areas that's kind of tight. It's not really wide open. And in some cases, depending upon where the cast is made, you don't really have that many areas to avoid. Well, one tactic that I do, you know, at least I try to employ, is I kind of draw the pursuers to me. And instead of just continuously jumping in the same direction, like let's say I just continue to jump right, what I'll do is I'll alternatively jump right to left, right to left, right to left. Right? In a lot of cases, you know, they'll like run into the ground or something like that. I also use that tactic. Right? But other than that, that's basically all you can do. Now, I know some of you guys will say, well, dude, you're forgetting all about the silver pendant. The only reason why I don't necessarily recommend the silver pendant is because, number one, the silver pendant does not inflict damage. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, you're dealing with a guy with pursuers. And let's just say either he has a rapier or a katana. Now, during the time that the pursuer's sorcery is pursuing you, your opponent notices that you, let's just say you execute the silver pendant's force fields. We'll just call it a force field, right? And let's just say you do it twice, because in some cases just employing it once is not going to do the trick. Well, while you are using the force field, your opponent is doing a running R1 attack, right? So I mean, in some cases it's good, especially when there is a reasonable distance between you and the caster. In other cases, you know, because I run into guys who they'll employ, let's just say, well, actually they'll deploy the pursuers, and while the pursuers is following you, they'll just kind of run in for a katana running R1 attack or a running whatever kind of attack. So you kind of screwed in both cases. You know, I've even seen some of these other ridiculous players who they'll use. Actually, I don't even want to talk about that tactic, because I mean, if I talk about too much, guys will get bright ideas, so I'll just leave it alone. Right? So we'll just leave it at that. But that's the reason why in a lot of cases I don't even suggest the silver pendant. I think the silver pendant is good in the Manus boss fight. You know, because Manus, after he casts those whatever kind of spells though, you know, they are, he doesn't really immediately follow up with an attack. But that's PvP. I mean, that's PvE rather. And we're talking PvP. And the conditions in PvP is a lot different than in what it is in PvE. Right? So those are my suggestions with regard to dealing with some of those dark magics. Right? Of which I do not think the silver pendant is a good option unless you are at a reasonable distance between you and the caster. Alright, so we're back at it. And actually, this is one of those fights that are kind of close, mainly because this guy plays pretty careful. Right? He's not one of those all-out brawlers. Right? He's kind of one of those players that kind of reads, you know, his opponent. So you really have to be careful, because in a lot of cases he's looking for opportunities. Now, I'd like to give a shout out to good old Mr. Troll Assassin. I think this guy's an awesome player, right? And even though I think I beat him in this match, I mean, that guy is pretty good. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to send a formal invitation for Mr. Good Old Troll for a good old battle of the, not battle of the Bills, for a Rumble in the Jungle series. I haven't done one of those series in a long time, and I think good old Troll Assassin would be a good candidate. Now, first and foremost, and you guys kind of, you know, see his good old PvP matches. You want to fight him. Troll is one of the Twitch bros. Now, although he is not a streamer, he's often on some of the more popular PvP channels. You know, those being, I think I've seen him on Dark Lord Sins, I can't remember. But I do know he's kind of on Peeves streams every now and then. Barneasy, he's one of those big shot Sunbro, Twitch bro dudes. I've seen him on Lance's, Yuka's Legion a few times. So I do know that although he doesn't stream himself, he is a participant in the chats, and he does involve himself in the fight clubs and tournaments. Right, so you might get lucky enough to face Troll. But yeah, I think I'm going to try to invite that guy for a matchup in a Rumble in the Jungle. I think he's pretty awesome at the PvP. I mean, I think that guy kind of parries me like 4 or 5 times, like total. And this is one thing I had to kind of sit back and figure out about Troll, because one thing I will admit that in a lot of cases I kind of take people for granted, especially when I'm not familiar with them, right? And I just kind of flat out play them. Once I notice I'm playing against a guy that parries, I definitely change up my tactics, because if you'll notice, he kind of parries at the same times that I parry. And because I parry only during certain times in a lot of cases, I have reason to believe that his parry attempts are at the same times that I attempt parries, which are usually immediately after, you know, a flipping R1 attack or after a blocked attack. Because you guys will notice the time when he's parrying me. See, notice that I think I attempted a kick for which he blocked, and he immediately parried, because, like as do a lot of people, I attacked right after the block shot. Right, and he does that a lot, which is good. So, you know, I think this is one of the first few matches we have, but you guys will notice that I switch up my tactics, because I know he's going to parry at times that I would normally parry, which is a good thing. So shout out to good old Troll. Alright. So we're back at it again. And actually I think I fight Troll a few times. Now let's talk about preparations for the arena. Right, because I think the title suggests that I should give some suggestions. Now, let's just say you're a hotshot guy and you're looking for a high-speed long streak in the arena. One thing that I would suggest is for you to equip yourself with, you know, 1 at most 2 attunement slots, and the sufficient amount of faith to be able to cast at least a basic healing miracle. And I say that because a lot of these guys win, not necessarily because they outplay you, but because their health is always being... Guys, notice that? I bit the bait, right? He parried a lot of the same times that I do. So a little later on, you guys are going to notice I'm going to change up my tactics. I'm not going to swing the same times that I usually swing. Guys, notice that? He almost got me again, and you notice I didn't swing, because I know we have similar parrying patterns. Now, I think this really raises a good point, right? Because I've read in the comments where some people would suggest that being parried is just as bad or just as OP as being world BS, right? And I'm not inclined to believe that, mainly because, you know, I mean, just think about it. I'm talking through it right now, right? I've made observations about his ability to parry. I've experienced his ability to parry. And based upon that, I'm doing changes in my playstyle. Now, can you really make any changes in your playstyle when you're dealing with, let's just say, a roll BS Fisher? Because I've even run into these type of guys. As a matter of fact, they won't do anything at all but continuously flip and only use roll BS as a tactic. I've even been faced against those type of guys. I mean, because think about it. You have to swing your weapon. You have to engage. And some of these guys just sit back and wait for you to swing, which is a lot different than being parried, right? Because I don't know anybody that is just so hot shot that every swing equal a parry. Now, I think I'm pretty decent at parrying, but guess what? I don't hit, you know, a successful parry 100% of the attempts. Now, I do narrow my predictions down, right? And I've kind of explained the times that I will attempt to parry. you can notice even the tactics that good old Troll is using. He's not spamming the parry, which there are a lot of guys out there, and I think I've even pointed that out in the past, where you'll get a guy who just parry, 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 parry. If you notice, good old Troll and I use similar tactics with regard to parrying. If you notice, you don't see him just spamming the parry. He parries during certain times. Same thing with me, right? You don't see me just going out spamming the parry 20 times during one match, and then I land the 21st, and then I, raise my arms and saying how great a parrier I am. No, I don't do that. And I fought a lot of guys like that, and actually they're pretty boring to fight against, right? Because now, case in point, I remember when I pretty much kind of first started doing vids, I talked about playing against Short Dude. Because I know, there's some guys out there who I've made this comment about, and they thought that I was directing the comment at them specifically. But this is not the case. I've talked about a lot of people who play this way. Case in point, like I said before, you watch a lot of my earlier videos that feature Short Dude. And a lot of those videos you will hear me say, that guy spams parry all the time, right? But as time went on, he doesn't play like that. And actually, he's improved in this parry based upon what I've seen, on streams or maybe experience for myself. He doesn't spam the way he used to. And, in the beginning, he'll just, swing, parry, 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 swing, swing, parry, 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 swing, parry, parry, parry. He doesn't play like that anymore. Now he kind of narrowed down his attempts. He kind of weighs his option with regard to when he should attempt the parry and when he shouldn't. So his methods have been refined, just as other methods have been refined. So that's a big difference between the way some people play, who spam the parry, and other people who parry only during certain points. And I think that's a classic example that good old Troll Assassin demonstrated for us all. Because to the extent that you guys are familiar with my vids, you can even see it in my own gameplay. You don't see me just run up to people and parry, run up to people and parry, run up to people and parry. Most of the times, you'll see my attempts in the same instances. And in a lot of those instances, I'm successful. And when I don't think I'm going to get a parry, I don't really throw out one. Right? Because I really think there's a difference between a person who just blindly parries and a person who predicts them. And they're pretty good at predictions. And personally, when I'm playing, I kind of want to look like I know what I'm doing. Even if I'm losing. For example, sometimes I'll have videos and I might kind of look back on some of the old footage, right? And I'll notice, I'll say something like, wow, I parried way too many times. That looked a little sloppy. Or I may look at other people's videos. Or perhaps even when I'm making observations against some of my opponents, I may notice man, that just really looks sloppy. For someone to just throw out 50 attempts and then, on the 51st attempt after they get you, they send you a message and say, "That parry." Come on, dude, that wasn't sweet. You know what I'm saying? In other words, dude, what did you really do sweet? You threw out 50 attempts and you hit it on the 51st. Now, I'm really trying to refine my methods, because even after I get relatively good at some of these basic strategies, I still have other strategies that I like to experiment and therefore master. Case in point, a lot of these, and actually I kind of look at PvP to a degree on tier systems, right? You have the third string, which for the most part kind of involves the noobs meaning brand new players, and some of the ones who are relatively inexperienced with regard to PvP. Then you have the second string, right? They've been playing for a while and they're pretty good at some of the basic tactics. I consider myself a second string type of player. Then you have the first tier. Now, the first tier dudes, they're kind of like with the awesome tactics. Parrying left and right. Roll backstabbing, 20 shots in a row, and all these other things that are pretty much above me. One tactic in particular that I like to point out is playing unlocked. Now, you're kind of like a first tier dude if you're one of those unlocked players who are proficient at playing that way. Now, I'm not talking about one of you dudes who are rocking a Murakuma or a Zweihander or a Greatsword, and you just kind of do it every now and then. No, some of these dudes, I mean, they like straight up play unlocked, like for the most part, and a lot of the tactics. One example is good old Dark Souls Mind Eye. Right. Now, granted, I've heard some people say he spams pyro. Listen, dude, you can say whatever you want to say about what he does with regard to castings, but no one can deny his ability to play unlocked, which is a skill that should be learned by a lot of people, because that's a difficult task to master. Because not only are you throwing swings out, but you also have to rotate your camera, both in front of you, behind you, and on your lateral sides. And it's not really an easy thing to do. Another one of those unlocked hot shots is good old Elite, one of those Xbox dudes. And actually, I like to give a shout out to him because, I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about Elite Assassin, but I didn't even know that dude kind of visits my channel. Right? And he does every now and then. So, after he said, hey dude, actually, I'm Elite, I'm like, holy camole, I've got a big shot on my channel. So shout out to good old Elite. And as a matter of fact, I wish I was on Xbox, or that either he was on PS3, because I love to have a chance to fight that guy, because he's one of those unlocked big shots. I've seen him play on a number of occasions, and I'm like, holy crap, who can do that? Because I mean, just keeping it honest, I've played against a few guys who play unlocked, right? And every time I do, I just think to myself, like, okay, now where is this guy going with this stuff? I mean, because think about it. You have your reticle locked on, but because your opponent has their reticle locked off, I mean, they're just kind of going configurations, figure eights, figure S. I mean, they're just doing all kind of fancy dancy circles, and you're almost lost because they know what they're doing, but you don't know what you're doing, right? Because it's hard for you to follow their movements. So I think that's a fancy dancy tactic. Another tactic that I like to get more proficient on is the the dead angling attacks, right? And I'm talking now. Obviously, I know that if you take the reticle off, certain attacks do it. Okay, but some guys are better at dead angling than others. I'm one of those that I understand the basic fundamentals of dead angling, but am I what I would call quote unquote good at it? I wouldn't say so. Right, so although some people may say, wow, Brigade, I mean, you're pretty good at the PvP, I think we all have room to improve, right? And I think although I am pretty good at some of the basic fundamentals, right? Because if you guys notice, 9 times out of 10, I'm like a pure melee player, right? I'm not rocking the fancy dancy castings, even though I do understand how to cast. I mean, you guys have seen some of my builds wherein I'm using the Faith Mage or the Faith Pyro build, which is good. But for the most part, I just like pure melee attacks, because I think it prevents you from depending too much on castings, and it requires for you to get proficient on some of these basic fundamentals, right? And I enjoy that. So, I mean, hey, I love, being on second tier, but I am basically striving for that first tier type of gameplay. Now, before the video is over, I'd like to give a shout out and show a whole bunch of love and appreciation to all my subs. I've now reached the point of having over 3,000 subs, right? So I like to give a shout out and thanks to all the people who leave comments, both positive ones and negative ones. And actually, when I say negative ones, I'm talking about the ones who leave constructive criticism, right? That in some cases could be seen as negative, but when you really look, actually they're just kind of, giving you kind of food for thought. Because I think when guys leave these type of comments, it kind of forces you to think about some of the tactics that you're using, or perhaps thinking about some of the things that you're saying, thereby making you a better overall uploader and player, right? So thanks to everybody, right? I remember, playing, and I pretty much sucked in the beginning, you know, because I was one of these Hornet Ring Rapier guys, but I have definitely evolved, right? And I've done that largely with the help of not only a lot of my subs, but also some of the Twitch bros and some of the forum dudes, right? So thanks once again to all my subs. So this will probably be the end. I don't know, I have a little more Coliseum footage, and I might upload it maybe tomorrow or maybe some other days this week, because I've been pretty busy, but I have some more material that I'll probably upload this week, right? Alright guys, so until then, I'll kind of check you out next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Martyrs Brigade is out.